Hello, and welcome to Artist Talk at the C15 Art Space. This is our first ever Artist Talk, and I'm here this evening with the wonderful and marvelous Miss Annalisa Barron, and she absolutely abhors it when I speak of her this way, but I just can't help it, so I do it anyways. And she has been so important to launching the C15 Art Space. When I first had the idea to start an art gallery, I think I told a curator, and then within less than 12 hours, Annalisa was blowing up my phone, and within 24 hours, we knew each other, and then within 2 weeks, it was all starting and happening. And she's just been a major force of positive energy behind this entire project.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, really. And so she's been doing a show here. We had an opening Friday. The name of this particular show is Two Resourceful Widows, I think quite appropriately named in Women's History Month. But so really, there's just so much I want to know about you, but I know that you don't want to talk about you. So we're going to start talking about Place Projectors, which is this fascinating project that you started and you're pursuing with all this passion, and we're so lucky that we're in your way because you barreled through here with some beautiful artwork and an idea, and we've learned more about this building than we would have ever known otherwise. So I want to know, when did Place Projectors, well, tell me what is Place Projectors?
So Place Projectors is essentially using site-specific content to make a cinematic experience, right? So in sculpture, your content usually comes from the materials you use. And for me, I have a lot of background in film and in sculpture. And so for me, I wanted to look at the actual materials that we've made film with historically. So that's optical glass, different photographic processes, and a lot of really interesting devices that have been the culmination of a lot of innovation by a lot of different people, right?
Okay.
So we have so many different inventors that preceded Edison, preceded Kodak, but it was Kodak that mass produced the camera and all these different devices that we became familiar with, and then started to understand the world through the images that they created, right? And then you also have Bausch & Lomb, which is here, and basically when you literally look up the history of optical glass in the United States, you're going to see Bausch & Lomb videos and how important they were to World War II, and also the different technologies that optical glass has been incorporated into. And we have seen things at the microscopic level and things in space because of glass that was essentially perfected and engineered at Bausch & Lomb. So,
really?
Yeah, so it's a thing that honestly, like, some people in Rochester don't really know and appreciate, which surprises me because I'm interested in media theory and how things affect us and stuff. So we live in an age when we're always looking at images, and this city has a lot to do with why that is and how that came to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to see if we could invert the experience of film, which is usually captured moments in time and place and then put into a storyline or like re-edited, or a photo that takes one moment out of place in time and then at least allows it to be mass produced or seen by a lot of people. I wanted to see if we could have all of those materials make people to come together at one time and place and then experience that time at that location while they're there through materials that have made film. So Place Projectors is basically like an open sort of research project to see if that's possible, to see what that does, and also to see how it plays out, because I want to kind of have the temporality of film, which is like you come to a place, you record, and then you're gone. I want to see if you can come to a place, make a place projector, or make one of these sculptures, and then kind of stay, because that's the idea behind basically investing money in like the Historical Society and different historical preservation organizations and hiring people, because to me that's something that does last for a long time, and there's an impact that isn't just, like here's an art project and then it's gone, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So something you just said that really fascinated me. So your mission, you started, is to invert the experience of film from capturing moments in time at a certain place and sort of making it this sort of everlasting document, if you will, right? Would you say?
I think
That's
it's
the
not
typical
that it,
film?
so the typical film becomes everlasting because
Right.
it has been sort of, it's made a copy of a moment, right?
Right.
And now it can live because a moment we all know is there and then it's gone, right?
Mhm.
So the idea with making these sculptures is pulling up as much information about where everyone is going to be whenever they see the sculpture as possible. And then essentially having everyone need to be there, need to interact with the thing in order to actually get the content of that location.
Yeah.
So with a lot of film and video and a lot of things that we see, we are passive participants. It's going to just play, you know. You don't have a lot of say in how fast it's going or kind of what's happening. But with place projectors, the idea is to have to touch part of the film, to have to actually touch the object that's going to be projected up, or to have some kind of totally integral part in that, in those elements of cinema coming together.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're inverting the experience of film.
Yes.
We're no longer passive participants. We're now actually interactive in the art itself.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And well, that's amazing. I think that's wonderful. What else is so unique about your artwork is you're combining two really totally sort of separate categories of art, at least in my mind. You're taking sculpture and you're taking film, or I should say light work or projection work perhaps, more than film. But the idea of art through vision or through images.
Yeah.
And you're combining them into one.
Moving images, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When did this start?
When
did I got this idea?
This is a very good question.
Yeah.
I made a lot of sculpture for films, and I spent a ton of time.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and with other projects I've done, like the Moloch, the idea is always to have the most, like basically get the film as close to reality as you can. Have everything look like it's handmade because it is handmade. You know what I mean? Like have the audience kind of be at a point where they're like, I know somebody made this. There's a little bit less distance between what they're seeing and kind of what they experience in real life, right? Even though you're still using like some kind of.
Well, help me understand the Moloch more. Is this you made this creature?
Yeah.
And the Moloch is a creature.
Right. Yeah.
Is it an evil creature? Is it a villain type of monster type thing, or is it perhaps a friendly sort of big bird type creature?
Well, it was more pitched to me as it was like this sort of like zeitgeist-like creature. So basically, it was going to be this thing where it was sort of we're like at the end of the materialistic time where everyone is focused on getting more possessions. So basically, the monster was supposed to be this thing that sort of feeds on the spirit of the age, and so I guess yes, it's negative, but I more signed on to like the legend of the Moloch kind of thing, where it was a more open-ended character. And I was really interested on actually making a Moloch because in the movie Metropolis, the big, huge, oh, I love this. Okay, so the big, huge machine that all of the workers are being eaten by, like at a certain point, Moloch flashes on the screen because it's like the sort of, you know, the monster that was the Industrial Revolution and the machine, they were calling it the Moloch. So basically the Moloch becomes all of these like, you know, images of the spirit of the age, the like evil thing of the age, which was in that time the machine, like eating man, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, so Moloch now is basically like our relationship to our things, our relationship to, yes, exactly, yeah. So in the Moloch, the idea was to make an actual creature in reality, so have people donate their things and submit their stories, so that it would be the same thing as the thing in the film. Right, so that when you go actually stand in front of the Moloch in real life, you can have an experience of that Moloch and not just need the experience of film to be there.
Okay.
So I'm always kind of like looking for these projects where it's like, how can we kind of like not have film be such an ephemeral, ethereal thing? Like how can we make it physical? How can we bring a story like further into real life? You know what I mean? And then I realized that like all the films that I was participating in or I was making were all shot in digital. So they weren't even shot on film, but we call it film.
Sure,
right?
Sounds nice.
Yeah, so then I was like, you know what, I think I want to find a way to make the actual film itself, right? So then I was looking at different points in history when a film has been a handmade object. So Edward Muybridge showed the running horse film on his Apraxiscope, which was basically a handmade device, handmade machine.
Tell me in the audience,
Yes.
More about this running horse. Is this perhaps one of the first films of all time?
Yeah, pretty much.
And so he did this. How did you say?
So, so a zoopraxiscope is basically a combination of a moving image toy, a phenakistoscope, which is basically an illustrated disc that spins, and you watch it from behind in a mirror, and you can see those images then kind of blur into each other, and they look like they're moving. And then the next one is the magic wheel, which is basically an optical illusion that Leonardo da Vinci and then Michael Faraday both observed. And what Edward Muybridge did was he painted the silhouettes of the photographs of the running horse on a clear disc, and then there was an opaque disc with slats. They turn in opposite directions, and when you project a light through with the lens, you can see this semi-blurred image of a running horse. So that was the first sequential moving image projection.
Ah, okay.
Right. So in my mind, it's like that is where a film is a completely handmade object, right?
Okay.
You can't necessarily completely reproduce that. So then I was reading a lot, and there's one like really quintessential essay by Walter Benjamin. It's called Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. If you take art history or media theory, you can't avoid it, right?
Sure.
And the whole essay, like is very much dependent on aura. So it basically makes this argument that mass-produced film is problematic because it lacks aura, it lacks a position in time and place, right? So in order to even make that argument, you kind of have to define like, well, what's aura and why is it so important, right? So aura he basically ends up framing everything to just say that aura is about uniqueness. It's about how human something is. It's about its ability to have a lifespan. You know, like how do we relate to something? We relate to something because we're human and we have a lifespan. We have a location in time and place. We are unrepeatable, right?
Right.
So it was kind of that essay that put me on this path where I was like, you know what? Like there must be a way to make an unrepeatable experience of film, to make a handmade, unrepeatable experience of film.
Yes,
right?
With an aura.
Yeah, or just like the idea that like it's much more human than anything else. Like it's unable to be used in the ways that maybe mass-produced film could be used.
Irreplicable.
Right. Yeah. So to me, I had part of my content had to be time and place, obviously. So then I wanted to do something that would be like a lasting sort of part of the project, which to me is the like education and investing into a local group of young artists. And to me, like that immediately starts the conversation about professionalism, access to resources, and compensation, right? So it's very important for young people to have experiences where they work in and around some kind of art practice if they want to be an artist or if they want to know almost anything about being in the arts, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, I was like lucky enough to work for a lot of really amazing artists, very, very different artists. And along the way, they kind of all taught me different things. And I'm trying to bring a lot of that into one program.
Wow.
So when these different people work for me, I have a set list that I teach them given given how much time I actually have with them, given our budget.
Well, I know you don't want to do bio.
Okay.
But I have to know about a few of these artists you've worked with before.
Okay.
The audience just might be curious.
Okay. Yeah.
So give me a few of your favorite artists that you've worked with.
I worked with Stacy Levy. She is an eco artist.
An eco artist?
Yes, yeah. So Stacy Levy, her work is based in and around water and watersheds and kind of what's happening with water in different locations.
Okay.
And she'll work with architects and with all sorts of, even like small groups of people, and all of her projects kind of incorporate like what's happening with the water runoff. Like, was there a river here, you know?
Wow.
And the thing about Stacy is that she gave me a lot of responsibility, but she also explained to me, like, I need an invoice from you because this is how my business works.
Okay.
You know? So in art, I feel like a lot of the times when we read about artists and we read about their work, we do not read about, you know, what grants did they get in order to do this? Like what, you know, how often do they apply for different things? Like what's their daily life like? How did this actually come to be? How did this happen? Right? Yeah. So with Stacy, she was just incredibly transparent with me about why she needed what she needed, and she put me in positions where I needed to submit things to, like we were working on one competition in Cleveland, and she just put me in a position where I had to kind of create things to give to this like project that we ended up presenting to the city of Cleveland. But she put me in a position where it was like, this has to be of a certain quality and you need to create that.
She gave you real responsibility.
Real responsibility, yeah. And that was super, super good for me.
Oh, yeah.
But the only way you can do that is to work for someone like Stacey Levy and be in that position, right?
Uh-huh.
So in art, you're always kind of making your own path and looking at other people's paths, right?
Okay.
So one thing that I do with everyone that I work with now is I teach them how to make an invoice, and I have them invoice me for the money that I'm going to pay them, right? And then, so what I'm trying to do with Place Projectors is have a kind of like concentrated dose of like, you know, here's how I got the funding for this. This is what my life is like. This is what I need from you. This is what this project entails. And then basically there's a lot of it, which is just like, what do they want to do?
Sure.
You know?
So if we can just summarize the key things that the young artists that work with you, that you want them to sort of walk away with, or
Yeah.
you want them to experience, you want them to have real responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
you want them to have the ability to invoice, or at least understand why that's important.
Right.
And what essentially like an individual contractor type of
Yes, exactly.
career
Because then
path.
they can do that with other people. They
Right.
don't need me anymore after that.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
And so what are, and you mentioned a few things, but to help me, what are a few more of the things that you want them to experience? You mentioned you want them to do what they want. You want them to have that freedom.
Yeah.
Responsibility. What else? What else are they? What else do you want them walking away with?
So, for example, Misty Yarnell worked for me on this project, and she's a writer, right?
Okay.
So, with Misty Yarnell, I actually showed her some of the quotes and invoices and just like on paper interactions I've had with other writers that have worked for me before, and shown her, you know, like some people have a price per word. Some people will look at how many edits they'll most likely have on this document and incorporate that into their price, you know. And a lot of things that I say is just like, in general, make it very apparent that you understand your worth as a young creative. Communicate that. Communicate when you want to be paid. Be ready for people to want to change prices with you, you know. With Azaria, she's 17, she's super, super awesome, but somebody wanted to buy her drawing at the opening, and so we got to go to the mag and look at different ways that drawings are framed, different ways that a drawing can be sold.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then we talked about pricing for her drawing, you know, and it's like how much honor, like when you're 17, how do you know how much to sell your drawing for?
When you're 37, how much do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Salary?
Yeah. So we had a conversation about that because a lot of these things, like, I think that it's, you know, very widely known how important the arts are to a city, and it's it's very widely known that if you stick a bunch of artists in an area,
it's important, but we just don't know how to value that in dollar terms.
Exactly. So my thing is having that conversation with very young people and saying like, actually, like your work is pretty pivotal to a lot of the health of a lot of social areas, you know.
Sure.
And you should know that. I feel like there are a lot of very, very healthy, very, very healthy groups of artists, like the people who are doing Wage, like Wage.com. You can actually look up how much different institutions make per year, and it factors in how much you should be paid if you have a solo show there. So
Wage.com.
There are different initiatives that have to do with, you know, like what is it like to be a working artist?
Okay.
And I love that. I totally love that. But I think that it is possible to have those ideas be part of your art conceptually, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't need to be a both and. It doesn't need to be like, I'm going to be an activist or an artist. I think that it can be all part of one work. It doesn't need to be completely solved. So it's just kind of a thing. It's like, as artists, can't we make art that essentially like lets more money into our community? Can't we come up with a way to position what we do so that things that already exist benefit a large group of people rather than just us or just one gallery?
Great.
Because honestly, like like in one artist's lifetime, you're going to go through recessions, you're going to go through changes in your family. There's going to be a lot of things that happen, but the best thing that I think anyone can do is to position yourself and the people that you're around somewhere where they're not as reliant on external resources. They're not as reliant to being connected to like a major city, right?
Okay, great. tell me what the show is. I want to know several things, and I'm trying to figure out what order to ask them in. Because I want to know what the show is.
Okay.
I want to know more about your projector and sculptor tool, and I want to see someone use it.
Okay.
And how much fun it is.
Okay.
And how it could be just like a great temporary addition to maybe like an office space or a dentist or a doctor's office or something like that. And I want to know how you did it.
Okay.
And I want to know how did you get this information?
Okay.
So those are your questions.
Okay.
Which one do you want to start with?
So when I get a location for place projectors,
Mhm.
the first place that I start is the Rochester Historical Society.
Great.
I have basically worked out with them that I pay them by the hour for my time there, because I think that if you are an organization that is basically recording the history of a place, you are integral to maintaining the character of that place and what that place is, right?
Absolutely.
And a lot of those people work very, very hard and don't get paid a lot. And I think that if you're going to ask them to help you, you should pay them. So the first thing that I did is I worked out how much they would want per hour. And so then I meet with a man named Bill Keeler, who's just an incredible historian and super, super smart and really, really helpful. And we first look at plat maps they have a plat map from 1888, they have one from 1927. Basically they were made at different points whenever they kind of changed a value system of, okay, we want to know who owned these properties, where they were from, and now we want to know what these properties are made out of, and also like who's in them now, right? So not who owns it. So then from there, from the maps, we find out like, okay, this is the person who owned this place, and then we'll go into the Rochester directories, which go for like 200 years, and find out as much as we can. And basically, like it is a pick your own adventure of just whatever resources they have there. And then from there, I went to the city archives, I went to the courthouse, and that's kind of the model for now. I would really like to have more community involvement, where maybe we find something at the Historical Society and then see if anyone's relatives are still around, which could be really cool. But for this site, what I learned was
So you're looking for relatives, you said? You're hoping that you
yeah,
have relatives around that care about the history of Rochester?
Yes, yeah.
I think there are some people out there like that.
Okay. Because what I would like to kind of unite people over a place that maybe they don't know each other, even though they're very all connected to it. But anyway, yeah.
Beautiful.
So what I found out is that there were two different widows that owned this building at different points in time.
Now this exact building or this plot?
So it is this plot.
Yeah.
And the foundation that this building is on now.
Really? So so did you go into did you find proof that was it maybe at one time like demolished except for the foundation?
So what I can see is they actually outline the shape of the building that's here in the plat maps.
Yeah.
So I can actually see like when there's an addition to a building or when they build a building next to it or when they take it down. So it's just like the rough outline of the building. But so there was a building where the parking lot was, obviously, but Catherine Hall was the first woman that owned it, and we know she's a widow because on the plat map it says Mrs. Catherine Hall, and on most of the other lots it's a man's name.
Okay.
And it's only a woman's name with a Mrs. in front of it if she is a widow. Okay. So that was how we knew she was a widow. I did find at the courthouse.
And before you go, let me ask: what if it was a single woman who owned the property?
I didn't find any of those, so I don't actually know.
So it just isn't. So what I'm alluding to is,
I'm not sure if I don't.
That
know
at that
how
time,
would work.
which was long ago, but not that long ago, it was literally unheard of that a single woman would own property,
right?
Unless she unfortunately suffered the loss of a husband. That was the only way she was deemed.
Right. Well, I think that was the only way she was
appropriate.
recorded as a property.
So
yeah.
And this gets into a deeper conversation, which we want to have, about, and I don't want to skip ahead, but how the data that people collect on their current times is really a reflection of their own values.
Oh yeah.
And which is really, for me, the most revealing piece of this whole exhibit.
Right.
But anyways, I kind of cut you off.
So basically what we find out is Catherine Hall was actually like a pretty well-to-do woman, and she bought multiple properties before her death in 1887. And she was actually recorded as owning this in 1888 because as they were gathering the information for the like new plat map or whatever, I think that either they were still kind of negotiating her will, or like she passed away in 1887 when they'd already gotten the information, and then in 1888 when the map was like released, it was in there, you know?
Well, yeah, we talked about this too, how it took sort of
Right.
an event such as a death in order for people to care about recording things. So.
Right. So another thing. So I kind of found this dead end with her because she willed the property to someone, but there was no kind of dispute over the will, and if there isn't any reason to make documents over the transfer of property,
it simply happens.
It simply happens. Yes,
right.
exactly.
Or at least back then.
Right. So that's where I have this gap where I'm not sure who owned the property until we hit about 1919, and then we find Mrs. Ida Roan owning the property.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, before we go further, in 1888, do we know the function of this building that we're in now? Do we know what the function of it was?
In 1888.
When we sort of first know that Catherine owned it and passed away.
So we know in the 1860s that it was billiards and billiard rooms, and her husband was alive. Yeah.
Really?
So
billiards and billiard rooms.
Billiard rooms, right. So that, I don't know if that means that it was billiards and a bar and there were rooms and everything, but basically the structure of the place allotted it for a lot of people to be in it in different areas. And then in 1919, and then in the map in 1927, it is a boarding house. And we have a Preston Roan, Ida Roan's possible son or relative, who is the cook, right? And so in one of the Rochester directories, we also see that it says that it is a boarding house at that point. So
for those, what is a boarding house?
A boarding house is essentially a place where people come to stay, and you're given a key to your room, and you're able to like have your meals, and you're sort of taken care of.
So maybe
it's
like an all-inclusive hotel. An old-fashioned version of an all-inclusive hotel.
But you could probably live in a boarding house much longer than a hotel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So I kind of got this very domestic. It's taking your domestic skills and essentially like monetizing them and being like, okay, well, I know how to be a homemaker and take care of like different things, and I'm now going to run a boarding house, right?
Which perhaps for the era, the time being, would be extremely appropriate for a widow.
Right. Exactly. So, with Catherine Hall actually scooped up some other properties before she passed away, like just a couple years before she passed away, actually. So she has deeds to different places over in the courthouse, and I haven't found exactly what she was doing with the other properties, but they both seem to be very industrious, busy women, which is super cool to me. So that was
absolutely.
Like as a person sort of being able to pick what I found, and I didn't find much else besides a lot of evidence of like women owning the space.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. So I felt really lucky that I was like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting, great, you know. So for me, the thing that I wanted to find was some kind of way to identify an aesthetic that I could bring into the actual sculpture, right? So we know that these two women are widows, and especially in the like 1880s and stuff, and in the 1800s, there was like a way that people mourned. There were things that they wore, and there were things that they wore for a certain amount of time.
Right. I found this so interesting.
Right. Yeah. So I guess for the first year of mourning, you only wear black, and you wear like ornate black, right? So that means that there's like different sort of embroidered things, and there's names for all of it. And basically at the 1 year point, you're allowed to be a little bit plainer. And then at year 2, you're allowed to eventually introduce color and other things into your outfit. So what I found was a mourning fan that was basically right between the two time periods. So it's this black ebony mourning fan, and it had carvings that were on all of the like supportive pieces. And so I drew them, I photographed them, I drew them, I spent some time with it, and then I basically figured out the design for the structure of the projector so that they like incorporated the actual mourning fan and what it looked like.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's sort of the process, is like, let's learn about the location and make sure that the projector is dependent on the location and what I found out about, right? Yeah.
Great. And so if we get a chance to look at your exhibit, we see that sort of horizontally you have these events chronologically ordered. right,
Yeah.
in your exhibit.
Right.
And there's a key
Yeah.
attached to different important dates. So tell me about the keys.
So
What do they mean?
okay, so basically there are available dates and numbers on the wall, and all of the keys have a tab on them,
Mhm.
and they have a number on them, just like you would be given one key and it has a little brass piece that tells you your room number, right? So there are keys that have to do with a date of an event that has to do with the space. There are keys that have to do with the actual item number for something at the Historical Society. And there are keys that have to do with the address. So this address changes like 3 separate times.
Really?
At one point it's 4 and 4.5.
And 4.5.
And 4.5, yeah.
And now it's 15.
And now it's
so
15, exactly.
Here we are.
Yeah. So the idea is that those objects are tactile, and each key is very, very different, and they are actually what you put into the part of the sculpture that's an opaque projector. So light bounces off of it and reflects into the lens, which is a Bausch & lens, and onto the wall. So essentially you are fully in charge of animating the moving image.
Wonderful.
And then also able to, like, I feel like reflected light has a really great quality that we don't see very often. Okay, so the way that I have learned about a lot of the projection aspects of these is by people giving me lenses and people giving me like types of optical glass that I've never used before, and then having like a headlamp and some other thing and just kind of putting them in different positions.
Yeah.
And the way that reflected light ends up coming in and out of focus and reflecting off of things is something that I don't see like regularly. I see digital projections, you know what I mean?
Right.
I see light that comes through windows and doesn't necessarily do something that's like so incredibly precise, because optical glass is incredible because of how perfect it is, how it's ground down. Anyway, so I have just been kind of like in love with physics lately because of like reflected light.
You know, these keys, I think they're really cool. If I want to take one home, can I do that?
Yes, you can actually. The keys are for sale.
Awesome.
They go to Place Projectors.
So if I buy a key for I think $40,
yeah, the keys are $40.
and the proceeds from the $40 go directly into Place Projectors, into the project, into sustaining it, and
Yes.
doing this exact kind of work in new locations and covering more local history.
Right. So the projectors actually you can essentially display them for a certain amount of time, and that's how we fund the project. Is you can display a projector or commission a projector, and then that money, essentially 25% of it gets split between assistants and the Historical Society, and then the rest goes to materials for the projector. So the idea is if they're like basically the sale of a projector, the display of one, or the commissioning of one automatically will invest in where you are, which is like the thing I'm really pumped up
Excellent.
about. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've done a pretty.
The reason I'm able to even learn about these women is because of what people valued at different times and what they chose to record, right?
Right.
So at the time that Catherine Hall was the owner of this lot, people valued who owned the property, not necessarily who was working on it, and where they were from, right? And then we get to Ida Roan, and then people value who owned the property, what's the building made out of, what are the people in the building doing? And that was because of a different way that they were like taxing people at that time, right?
Sure.
And actually, when we get higher up into like 1944, and a lot of this is on microfilm now, but there are actually drawings of the buildings done by hand with the measurements, with different ways that they denoted what the buildings were made out of, and they are so exact that they are kept because satellite imagery can't even like do as good of a job at telling us what used to be here as those drawings can.
Wow.
Which is, and you should see them. They're like these beautiful tiny little lines. Oh, I love it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but
So anyway, so for me, it's just kind of a, like, yes, we do know about George Eastman, and we do know a lot of these people that did really incredible things. Like, same thing with Bausch & Lomb, those guys are ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But
I mean, like you said, change history.
But like, I think that the question is like, what do I value? What do I keep? What I record? So people at those times, they had all of their letters. They had all of the things that or not all the things we have, but we have this huge bulk of information online, like digitally. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if we don't value keeping it, we will just delete it all. It is not that it like eternally exists. You know, it's not that, you know, maybe those people at that time had all of the possessions they had in their letters and they felt very well recorded, or they cared or didn't care, you know. But unless the value system of our culture is one where it's like, or our culture we're like closely within, is one where we record certain things. Those things do not carry on. Like they get left where they were.
Yeah.
So the type of information that I was really hoping to find, which I'm fine with not finding because I learned a lot while I was doing it. I learned that basically like unless people really valued that, that just does not.
Sure.
Doesn't get passed on. Yeah.
Sure. It can't help but reflect.
Well,
maybe
it's significant now to be like, hey,
maybe we're
like
not
there
famous.
were like super awesome industrious women running businesses and owning land in a time that we don't think about, you know, them doing that because basically like that's not how it was recorded. We don't talk about that as much.
Okay,
you know?
yeah.
So now that it's something that's like, okay, well, hey, you know, like we're doing it now. It's been happening. It's just wasn't talked about as
interesting.
much,
Very
you know?
interesting.
Yeah. So there were Catherine Halls buying up all the deeds around here. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. Well, thank you so much for this
you,
conversation. We would be amiss if we didn't thank the awesome foundation.
Heck yeah.
Bosch and Law is massive in providing this.
Amy Vina.
I think John Slater helped a little.
John Slater donated lenses. Yes.
So thank you.
Rome Selly.
Thank you. And Kevin and Maud, thank you for all this.
Richard
That would
Glazer.
be-
Ray Matrano, actually. I don't know if you know Ray. Ray Matrano is like, I think Ray Matrano and Christina Kaiser with this project have been really, really helpful.
Good. Yeah. So we have to thank everyone at the Yards. We have to thank Christina.
Yeah. It's actually hard to know all the people to thank.
Yeah, there's just, this whole project has been, just the community support has been overwhelming in a good way. And just can't say enough positive things and thank yous to all the people that have helped us. So.
James Barbour and Heidi and Adam.
Adam, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for watching.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.